Welcome back, everybody, to another great episode of Help 100 Schools. Today, we've got a hot topic. It is AI adoption in schools. I'm back with my occasional co-host and great guest, Rich Suttie, who I'll reintroduce to you in a moment. But for now, gear up, because whether you think of AI as something that is coming, something that's here, something that you want to keep far away, listen up, because there's a lot to take in.
Thanks, Carl. This is going to be a good one, I think.
Absolutely. Welcome to Help 100 Schools. As a professional in education dedicated to expanding enrollment, you're already a fundamental part of this movement. We are here together to amplify the positive ripple effect that comes from advancing education. We're committed to keeping listeners inspired with timely lessons, valuable stories, and insights from brilliant minds and dedicated hosts. Our mission is a collective effort. Together, let's make a difference in spirit and in action to help 100 schools grow. All right, here we go. So, Rich, to reintroduce you is so interesting because you're a man who just moves around and does a lot of different things, even though you stay focused on some pretty solid North Stars. So, what I would tell the audience is that you're a man who has been ahead of school multiple times. You're a former Navy man and a Top Gun instructor. Absolutely. And you've got so much energy for good, and you focus it on helping schools. You help a lot of Christian schools, and you're a fountain of knowledge that I'm grateful to have on my side. And beyond that, what more is there to say for this audience?
Yeah, I even though I served in the military, I learned early on that my real passion and love was teaching and education. And I became actually at the time the Navy's youngest instructor pilot early in my career. And the teaching aspect never left. I just loved educating, finished up in the formal academic side of the military in terms of equipping and educating future leaders to be able to lead in eras of uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, strategic importance. And then went on afterwards and had an executive deanship roles in different universities and as well at the higher education to do executive education and development, professional development for leaders. And then, yes, private school leadership as well, which was incredibly difficult. And I'm going to share with the audience right now the toughest job I ever had. And I've actually been to war, and it is the toughest job I've ever had. So I commend you all who are here and listening for what you're doing in the private school area, and I wish you all the best.
Well put. I actually learned a lot in there too. I didn't realize that you were the youngest at the time. That's pretty cool. That's all great. Okay, well, to the topic at hand, AI adoption in schools. This, as you know, and probably the listener knows, this could be its own ongoing series. That could be the name of this podcast that would probably go on and be popular. So to try and make this fit into one current episode is an interesting challenge, but we're here for it. And Rich, you've been doing a lot of research, so I think you probably could tee this up well with that as a background, as a backdrop. What do you think?
Well, and again, with the context of private schools, principally K-12, you don't have enough resources. You don't have enough people. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough of anything, right? Of anything. And so if there's technology and the right way to approach any technology, whether it was the advent of the personal computer, which I lived through, the calculator, which I lived through, the leaving pencil and paper and going on to where we are today, I lived through all of that. The right way to approach any technology is to leverage it, not to let it run or dictate or dominate. And so that's going to be something you're going to hear from me all along in this discussion, is how then do you leverage these technologies as they come? And artificial intelligence, particularly the large language learning models that we have now that are so interactive and easy to do on the surface. On the surface, there's some interesting complexity and technique that really makes a difference down, as soon as you get into it. But on the surface, it's pretty eye-watering. It's pretty amazing. And yes, I've been doing, first of all, as a military person, I love technology. So the minute I heard about this, I got the beta. I got into the beta of ChatGPT. Now, I don't know, going on 4 years ago, and was able to play, which is the first thing you do with any technology. Is it's a game, right? It's just a game. So I was able to play with it long before it was out there. And the more I played, the more fascinated I got with the potential for where I was I was ahead of school for at the time. How can I leverage this? How can I make me more productive? How can I improve my own performance in my role? How can I do more than less in terms of efficiency, as well as being more effective? And so that was my early introduction to AI as we know it today.
Great. And then I know you've done some surveying, and so I think that's important. So how
Yeah.
can you give some context there?
Yeah, so I go about 3 months into this and I start sharing it with colleagues. We all, I mean, we should, I hope we're doing that. We're networked. I mean, you're networking us right now. So this is what I wanted to do. And I start sharing it with colleagues and they don't know anything about it. And I'm about 3 months steeped into this and I'm going, well, you should take a look. You should take a look. So I put together a 35-minute or 40-minute webinar and I just invited friends and family, and that expanded. And I was able to do that with a couple of foundations that were very interested in sponsoring those webinars so that more and more schools could be aware of what this is, what it can't do, what it can do, what the risks are, what the hazards are, what the benefits are, all that fun stuff, right? In 40 minutes. And as a part of each of those webinars, and I've done probably 50 or 60 to date, I took a survey. And it was the same survey every time. And I found in the early days, I asked everyone attending 0 to 10, how familiar are you with AI? A 0 was you could barely spell AI if you were given, the A and the I. And a 10 was you're the developer, you invented it. And you can scale through the rest of that scale. And the average for the first 2 to 3 years, the average was between 2 and 4. 1 in the very beginning, zeros, lots of zeros, but 1, 2s. And then it slowly crept to maybe a 4. I'd have a few people show up and say, I think a 6. Pretty much 6 was the zenith of all of those surveys. Even today, I had one last fall, 5 to 7 for those attending. And there's a little bit of a moral hazard there in terms of the economic use of that term. People show up because they're already engaged. So you have a little bit of a biased group because they're not just showing up because they've never heard of it before. So I think that's happened. But Carl, it's been a really slow adoption.
Understood. Yeah, that's great data, and it's interesting that the progression and the collection. What do you think that the ramifications of that are today?
Yeah, it's unfortunately lost opportunity is my view. So we've lost a lot of ground already. We can make it up, but we've lost a lot of ground. There were 3 primary reasons given if the score was low in the survey. And one reason, a couple of these are really interesting, but one reason was I just don't have time. And I think everyone on this call right now will share that one. I don't have time. I have a scripted day that starts at 6:30, ends at 6:30, 7:30 at night when I grade papers, or I'm an admin and I'm doing meeting with parents after school or donors or whatever they're doing. I know the drill and I know the tyranny of the day. So I don't have time. I don't have time to play around and learn this. The second reason given was was almost like I've only heard the negatives. So I've kind of resisted even going there. So doesn't AI hallucinate? Does it tell the truth? Is it biased in some way? in its organic sense. And oh, by the way, doesn't it just encourage everyone to cheat? Isn't the whole real thing cheating? Aren't we taking the human being out of the center and putting the technology in the center? Now the humans are around it, not in the middle, the people. And that's not what we're in. That's not our business. Our business is people in the middle and in everything else around the outside. So those were reasons people either resisted or were unable to really understand how AI might help them do education, teach, learn themselves, as well as teach, as well as administer, as well as lead.
Well, am I remembering correctly? I think that you told me that there were three categories of resistance that came up as a pattern. And I thought that was really interesting. Was it that one third was on board with AI, one third had no idea, and one third had absolutely no interest? Am I
No
remembering
interest.
about right?
Yeah, and it still existed. I did this again the last fall was in November was probably the most recent, and it was the same skew, same ratio of people. Now they're all on the call, so there's at least curiosity. At a minimum, there's curiosity, like what I could be missing out, even if I know I don't want it right now. What about the future? Are there going to be guide rails? Are there going to be policies? Are there going to be practices? Are there going to be techniques that I can trust, that I can rely on, that give me confidence that I can use this tool and make it better where I am and not have it hurt what we're doing or our purpose or our cause? And so the rest of my webinar would go about, okay, first of all, let's teach what it is. Let's teach what it isn't. Let's teach some practical scenarios and examples of what it can do and where it's probably best used with trust, with confidence. And then let's teach where you probably should be very skeptical and be very, careful. And that was in the leadership domain mostly. In the classroom, it's really a whole nother webinar. It's beyond that. It's there, and how you would apply this as a teacher in the classroom, particularly student involvement, student logins, so to speak. How would the student log in? And of course, the students are logging in. Middle school forward, we know the evidence is the students are logging in wherever they can. So then that poses another problem, is management, AI management, as much as AI use and productivity. Sure. So it's complicated.
Right. Well, and I feel like keeping folks' eyes broad and to the possibilities here, since that's probably one of the major reasons they're here, right? Like, how should they be using it?
Yes.
Then what should we go with how those more progressive schools are using it to get value?
Yeah. There are some examples of schools that have taken this on. And of course, the idea, and you all know on the call whether these things are true. Does your school have a policy? Does it have a policy for leadership and administrative functions and tasks? Does it have a policy for teaching and classroom administration and management and learning and student use? Is there a student use policy that's been carefully put together and it now is leading practice? And then what are the practices? Do you have guidelines? Do you have limits in terms of practices? And then what are the techniques? How do you use it? What's the best way to prompt? What's the best way to assure that the outcome of a prompt is trustworthy? How do you do that? And stuff like that. I mean, a lot of people don't use one tool. As you know, there are hundreds and more tools available at low cost or no cost. And so they have different algorithms and they come with different biases in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. And when you know that, and that's something you can go find. In fact, you can ask AI, what are all the tools in your domain of this LLM generative AI where we can text or talk to you and you can talk to us back? What are all the tools? and what are their strengths and weaknesses and what are their biases. Ask it. Ask it to tell on itself. And it's a fascinating discussion. And one of the things it'll answer is you should use more than one tool, because that way you get vetted feedback and back. And they do have different algorithms. ChatGPT, for instance, gets 68 or 9% of its information that it feeds back to you off of the social platform Reddit. Reddit is a incredibly biased platform of knowledge, a knowledge base of users with a low threshold of expertise and a serious bias, political and otherwise. And so ChatGPT is going to come back itself and go, here's what I think. So in terms of just an insight to practice is you actually have to train it. And that's a something over time function. Just like kids, you have to train them over time. And you can train bias out of the LLMs, but you have to do it. It has to be intentional. You have to understand what it is, and you have to understand how you can then train it so that it actually will minimize bias. And you can tell it where to go find information. So all of this wasn't available, by the way, early on. It is today. And when you talk to these folks and everyone listening, this is something that is bright for the future, because if you can manage this technology, then you can leverage it. And you can leverage it with trust and confidence, and then get your productivity, your performance improvements, and time saving and multiplier effect on people. It's incredible what this tool can do for you.
That's great. And did any specific use cases come to mind that you think are particularly interesting in schools?
Obviously, communications would be first. It will set up an entire look. One of the people I didn't have on my team at any of the schools I was at was an expert in communications. So therefore, you're just, that Friday email at the end of the week, you've got to put that thing out and help everybody. What happened this week at our school, and what's coming up next week, and that kind of stuff. Or incident management, crisis management, communications, etc. You can build, in minutes, a communication suite that can actually be done, particularly for admin over the summer. You can put that all together and calendarize it, and this will take you an hour without having a communications director, for $60,000 a year. This will take you 1 hour, and it will set up your communications for the entire year, the generalized communications, and then you can just tailor week to week some of the specifics and some of the focus. So that kind of a thing automatically. Policy reviews and policy documents themselves. Now, ChatGPT, it needs a policy. It will write its own policy, and it will be awesome. And you can say, look, here's what I want from you, and here's what I don't want you to do to me. Write a policy. And 18 seconds later, you're going to have about a 6-page policy that is a start that would take you hours, if not days, if not weeks, to produce on your own. And it will be pretty darn close. Then you can refine it. You can improve it. You can ask other chat applications to critique it. It's your editor. You can play editor with it. You can play critique with it. Tell me what's wrong. Where are the holes? Where is it redundant? So there's all those kinds of functions, which are fairly straightforward, but they require iterative work. It's fast, but it's iterative. Marketing, obviously, messaging. You can ask it all kinds of, here are the outcomes we seek. So you start with that. Now, and you want to always use these big to little. You don't want to ask it to do something detailed in its first. You want to always prompt training into it. So, and it will learn, and as I think everyone or most people know, it knows every conversation that you've ever had with it. So I've been having conversations for 4.5 years, and it knows. So I can just now say, well, the school I lead. I've already put the business plan for it, the strategic plan for it. We helped write that together, ChatGPT, you and I. So I don't have to revisit that with you. You know this. So reflect on all of our previous conversations. We're entering a phase of growth where we're expanding the school, several grades or several levels. Help me put together a marketing plan, both for the audiences of my current families, my future families, and also I need an investor prospectus for people who are going to help me do that. Those things are invaluable, almost instant, expert, and so yeah, all of that from the admin function, all of it. I mean, there isn't a place I haven't used it to help me do my job.
Well put. And as we look towards the future of this topic, I think a helpful lens is the progression of a school
Yeah.
in adopting and further leveraging the technology. What do you think that could look like?
Yeah, it's moving fast, isn't it? And it's already, there are advances that are scary because they're so good. And it scares people because one of the reasons there's a sort of resistance is that head in the sand that I'm going to lose my job. It's very personalized, right? We tend to personalize everything and stuff like that. The person that won't lose their job, in my opinion, is the person who has the role and the responsibility, but then embraces the technology to improve their performance and productivity in their job. And so if you do that, you're going to be smarter, faster, better at what you do, which makes you valuable. And yes, you have a personal assistant that will learn and then create and help with all of your tasks, almost all of your tasks. So the whole area of future is first not being afraid that it's going to continue to evolve, actually revolutionary involvement across multiple areas for business, the school, the business of school, the business of running a school, the business of actually assessing outcomes for a school, data. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You can drop a spreadsheet, you can drop any data field in there and have it be a data analyst that you could not afford. So you can now become, remember, Carl, was so much of what you do, I know, because you deal with analytics, and schools struggle with data and evidence. Evidence, it's like, okay, we have a accreditation coming up. What is the evidence that we're doing what we're doing? This is game changing for that going forward. So I would encourage schools to form a task force. It would be that multidisciplinary task force. So it's lower school, upper school representatives, teachers, lead teachers, as well as administrative personnel. I would include parents who are already leaning in. I wouldn't do any random assignments here. People who already have the curiosity, the interest, and maybe some degree, maybe they're a 5 or a 4, but they're not a 0. And they're not coming into it with that in terms of their understanding and self-described expertise. I would give the task, I would use ChatGPT to charter the task force. I would use ChatGPT to create a project plan for 6 months. I would have goals and outcomes created by ChatGPT that align to your school's vision, mission, and strategic plan. I would contextualize it all by dropping those documents in and training ChatGPT to know you better than you know yourself. And then I would have them work to collectively create the policies across the board, as we discussed earlier, the practices, the trainings, and then the thou shalt nots. You shall not use it for this area. You shall not use it at this grade level. You shall not use it for these purposes, for these reasons. And if you do use it, you will cite it, and you will have all those kinds of policies and practices put together. So I would embrace it. And even at the end, and Carl, this has happened, okay? At the end of a task force, the school's mission and their culture is such that they want to minimize in the educational process, in their core educational processes, and even in some of their administrative tasks in the way that they collaboratively work together, they want to minimize the impact of AI on the educational process. That's an intentional outcome. And it's one that they can all share and they can own, and they can understand why they want to do it and where they want to do it intentionally, instead of the haphazard and we haven't really done anything, we haven't looked at it, two people talked about it, and yeah, I know some people use it. I think the English teacher uses it, or I think the science teacher uses it, but I'm really not sure. That's not the best plan for leadership and the way to actually manage what this can be and what it probably shouldn't be in some cases.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, having the head in the sand is not going to behoove anyone in
Not
this
here.
category. No, I would agree. And as you know, we leverage AI, and it's something that I'm building into my organizations, as intentionally and strategically. And what we're finding is certainly the human element must not go away, but when you start to absorb and integrate it, it feels like you're building operating systems for your
Yeah.
own organization,
Yeah.
and which is very helpful if you look at the different functions that get provided within any organization, especially a school. So if
Right.
there's an operating system that could be built per advancement, per admissions, per marketing, communications, et cetera, that's there, it starts to open up the opportunity and the imagination, I think. And then, we could talk agentically and having those systems talk to each other, but I think that's a concept for another day and not necessarily for adoption, right?
Yeah, that's the next integration, is probably what's happening and right around the corner. Full integration. I mean, on your browser right now, if you're looking at your browser and you open up, whether it's Chrome, it doesn't matter what it is, if you open it up, if you don't have any integrated AI, I'm going to be shocked, because it almost comes with the browsers now. It comes with Microsoft Office. It comes with these things built in now and integrated. But I have on my browser, as I look at it, I have 12 AI tools that are on the sidebar, and they're ubiquitously there. And some of them pop into engagement, some of them wait for me to activate them. But, and Grammarly, is now integrated pretty much with email. And so that's correcting your email. We've been using it to correct Microsoft Word spelling on the fly, change words, suggest words. That's the simplest form of it. But yeah, so integration is the next big thing to understand. You can't, I guess the last point, Carl, is I don't know how you can avoid it.
Right.
And that alone should cause you to investigate, research, test, evaluate, and then come up with a plan. That alone, because I don't think you can avoid it.
Right. And even if you try to, the students, and maybe more importantly, the students' parents certainly won't.
Right.
So it's something that
Right.
would be to ignore at your own peril, unfortunately.
Right. Nope. I think so now. It's just, there's too much there.
Right.
And, but there are hazards and there are challenges, but that's just part of making a plan.
Right. Right. Not to close out on a dark note, right? Because really, this is an opportunity. This is technology to
Right.
make your life and work
Right.
easier. So I hope everybody is absorbing this and crystallizing in a way that's inspiring. Anything that you think we should add, Rich?
No, again, I think if you haven't already done it, I think forming up a posse, a small team, to take a close look at the different functions and tasks like we always say, there's some low hanging fruit where this is a no risk proposition and only good. Then you get riskier. more complex, and more challenging. Start with the easy stuff and go from there.
Well put. Excellent. All right. Well, Rich, where's the best place for folks to learn more about you and to reach you these days?
The best place is my LinkedIn profile. So, and I'm the only one. So having a Scottish derivative last name that isn't very common helps with LinkedIn searches. So just my name on your search bar is going to come up pretty quick, I think. And you're going to see me in the educational space, the entrepreneurial space on LinkedIn, and my picture is there. So you should be able to figure that out. But that's where I'm the easy to connect with.
That's Richard Suttie, folks, on LinkedIn. And
Yep.
we'll absolutely get that linked in the show notes for this episode at help100schools.com. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Rich, as always.
Awesome. Till next time, let's do this.
We are grateful for your support of the Help 100 Schools movement. Thank you for listening and for showing up. Now, please help us multiply the impact by reviewing, sharing, commenting, and staying engaged with us and our mission to help 100 schools grow. The future of education is in your hands. To learn more about today's topics, how to be more involved, and how to access our free resources designed to aid in your own mission, go to help100schools.com.